Today, we look at a plant that not a lot of people talk about. And in my humblest of opinions, that's a shame. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me and in front of me today. It's tropical houseplants. And for the people wondering, this is the Polyscias Ming. I'll put the other name as well because I think it's also the Aurelia Ming. I don't know, I can't remember which one of the two now is the correct one. But I bought this as a Polyscias Ming. Now this might be something that you do see in different box stores. I know some people in the UK at least have said that they've seen either this size or smaller or even larger in the B&M. I got mine from Grow Tropicals, and I think if I'm not mistaken, this is coming up to the second year of this plant. The title of the video, I'll double check my plant care app to tell you, but I think this is coming up to the second year of owning it. And I've got some thoughts. So yes, as I was just mentioning, the background of this plant is just that, basically. I got it from Grow Tropicals. This was another great way to show that their social media advertising is working, as a lot of people in the UK know, because I got served an Instagram advert for plants like they usually do, and this was one that I kept seeing, and I'm just like, ooh, I like that. I didn't have great experiences in the past with Aurelias or even Polyscias. I found them quite challenging. I've only ever really tried them in terrariums, and they did okay for me, but they were slightly slow growing, all of the things basically. But this was actually quite pricey at that time. I'm a see if I can find the price of what I paid for this and put it on here. And whatever that price is that I paid for it, if I can find it, it was double that originally when I saw the advert. But then this came out in the sale and nobody had snatched it up yet. And I'm just like, this is my time to shine. We've discussed this. I've got no self-control. But I know that there's a lot of movement these days for plants that are a bit more mainstream and not the rare type and not the kind of like desperate need to get all of the aroids. This is neither an aroid, if I'm not mistaken, and neither is this a particularly rare plant to find. So I thought this might be an interesting option for some people. I do have thoughts, and I have mentioned this on other videos. This is not a straightforward plant, but I'll talk about this during the review. But yeah, that's how this came into my care. Some of that background that I told you, that I kind of had some experience with these types of plants before. I will give you a bit of a spoiler. This surprised me. This was easier than my past experiences with other types of Aurelias or even Polyscias. So I will say that. The joys of being a YouTuber and actually no, just being a planty person. Not just YouTuber, like everybody gets this, like I'm covered in like soil from underneath the pot. So apologies if you see dirty hands, it's just because I'm holding a pot up and it's actually quite hefty. So, but let's talk about speed of growth of this one. So I'm not going to mince my words, it's not the fastest of plants. I'll give you that for free. But it's also not the slowest plant that I have. So let's benchmark this. And this is actually a plant that does not live in this space. This is a plant that lives in my bathroom. So this lives in more kind of traditional household conditions rather than this space here, which is a bit more kind of temperature controlled and the humidity levels and all of these things. Yes, this is in a bathroom, so it does have that. And if I'm not mistaken, this is growing in an easterly window or southeasterly window. I'll put it up the top there. I need to use my phone and find the direction exactly as to what that window looks at. But generally, most of the plants that I put on there that need bright indirect light do quite well. So let's benchmark this. I can benchmark this, actually let's benchmark this with the golden pothos that I don't have in here, but that I do have in my house. So during the growing season, you might get about 2 leaves each month on the kind of growing vine, every growing vine of a golden pothos. At least I do in my conditions. This is difficult because you can see this is not a plant that I can say there's a new leaf, or there's a second leaf, or there's a third leaf. This definitely has what I like to think of as bonsai vibes. You can kind of understand why, and if I show you the kind of inside bit of what that, there is just a one trunk, there's maybe a couple of volunteer kind of plantlets in here, but it's mainly one, and it just branches like mad. Obviously, big forms, small forms of these are going to be different. So if this had started here in the beginning of spring, this would have added about this much, and it goes around as well. So this is a plant that will bush up in all directions rather than just up the top as well. And obviously it's maybe to do with mine because I've got so many offshoots at the bottom that I tend to get a bushier plant, which is kind of why I wanted this as well. So not the fastest of things. And this is the bit that I was kind of hinting at earlier on. Something to bear in mind with this is, it, at least in my experience, I don't want to talk in absolutes. If you do have, and I know a few of you have got this plant and you've got your own experiences, I find that this plant, and we're coming into spring now, and this is why I'm showing it to you now. I wasn't going to show it to you in winter because it looks busted. So that is something to bear in mind with this. This doesn't look fantastic during winter. Let me caveat that with my conditions in winter. So as I said, this is in a bathroom. So it is in front of a window that can get a bit cold. That bathroom isn't blisteringly hot all day long. And this is a plant that requires stable conditions in terms of heat specifically. More so as well as light, but heat I find is the one thing that's very much a limiting factor to this. So if you can put this in somewhere that it's going to have stable temperature levels, you should be fine. Otherwise, what I tend to find is whatever growth it's had over the summer, it will lose about 60 to 70% of that just by a whole bunch of yellowing branches that I'm constantly picking up off this plant in the winter. So that is something to bear in mind. Ease of propagation with this one, and I'm going to be entirely honest, I have not propagated this, and I don't think I'm going to be propagating this. I don't think it's as easy as, and correct me if you've done this, I don't think it's as easy as taking a cutting. There are kind of what I like to call little elbows, and there are little growth points on those elbows, but they grow more of these leaves. I do not know, I have not tried it to take a cutting and try to propagate it the same way that we would from most other houseplants. I don't know if that works. I know that this is a thing that a lot of people will propagate via seed propagation, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't have a lot of experience, so this section isn't going to be particularly large. Again, call out to anybody that has had this and has been able to propagate this. Please do let us know what methods you use down below. I'd be really curious as well, because it's just a bit like, meh. I don't necessarily want to propagate this because one is enough in my life. I don't need multiples. I don't need multiples of any of my plants, but even more so this one, no. I am good. But let's touch on availability for this one really briefly, because as I said, I found this on Grow Tropicals, and again, if anybody's kind of looking to purchase anything over the springtime, I've still got my 10% off, so feel free to use that. But this is a plant that I did not know that it would come up as often as it would, based on what you all were saying, in other kind of standard box stores or even plant stores and things like that. I had never personally seen this anywhere. So when I did see it online, I'm just like, oh yes, this is speaking to me. This is also really gonna, at least in my experience, gonna tick a lot of those boxes for anybody that has had a passion for bonsais, or maybe finds that they struggle a bit with it. I had bonsais, this is what I mean, I've always been really interested in plants. I was the weird child at 6 and 7, where everybody else wanted toys. I was looking at my parents going, can I have a bonsai, please? Please, can I have a bonsai? I want to grow a bonsai. That's all I want for my birthday. So there was a point in my life that I had quite a few bonsais. Not the expensive varieties, although I would love to get into that a bit more. That's a whole different rabbit hole to fall down. I think that's the expression. But I'm not quite ready to do that. And I also know with a lot of bonsais, the true bonsai growers will usually tell you that they are meant to be grown outside, not in the house. So there is that to be said. But this ticks a lot of those boxes without it being too needy, not to the same level as a bonsai necessarily, at least like the trimming and the root pruning and all these things. You're not going to get much of this with this. Apologies for the light going down, but UK, so it was sunny a minute ago. It's probably going to be grey for the rest of this video, or coming back again now. But I have got it in a clear pot, and I'll talk about that in a bit of the accessories and care in this one. But yeah, I did not find this very often. And I know some people did actually tell me, I think when they said that they found this in places, and based on what they were saying that they spent on it, this wasn't a particularly expensive plant either. It's slightly salty because I paid a touch more than they would, but I think based on what was being discussed, I got quite a large plant for it, so I'm fine with that. But this is one that you will find other Polyscias. There's some really interesting foliage, and I'll bring it up so you can see the foliage, and hopefully that will focus because it is so wobbly when I'm holding it and windy because of the fans, but you can see it's very, very delicate. So this would also speak to a lot of the people that are really into kind of the delicate kind of fern leaves. So think maidenhair fern, anything that has got those kind of like really, really delicate leaves. Comes with its own set of problems, but as a whole, I don't think this is a plant that's going to get more expensive. I don't know whether or not we're going to get more of it on the market because I don't think there's a huge demand for these types of plants. As I said, I might be wrong because they might be all over like the box stores. I know I've got a huge viewership in the States and in Canada. Do let us know if in your locations you find that this is something you can find really easily and Memo's just talking rubbish because like he's in the UK. But or anybody from any part of the world, if you want to share experiences, if you've seen these types of plants before or even this specific type of plant before, do let us all know in the comments. I'd be very curious to know. And now to the section where a lot of people might start cringing already and just going, yes, you've said all of these things. What about the pests on this plant? Surprisingly, nothing. At least in my experience, for as long as I've been growing it, I haven't, touch wood, I have not had mealybugs. I'll say that one more time. I have not had mealybugs on this. Watch me jinx myself. I've not had spider mites on this. I've not had scale on this, although I would imagine scale would be a pain with this plant because it's such barky kind of stems. And I've never had thrips on this one either. The one thing I will say with the pot, because I'm using a clear pot, there's a couple of earthworms in there. And I'm just kind of frantically searching going, I don't usually get earthworms in a lot of my like houseplants. Is that an issue? Is it going to cause, are they going to disturb the roots to the point that it's going to be an issue? I know earthworms by and large aren't necessarily a problem. Now I was getting mixed commentary on there. So do let me know if you've ever noticed earthworms in your houseplants and if that's ever caused you any issues. I'm not talking about slugs, I'm talking about earthworms specifically. So it's actually kind of cute to look at earthworms around. I'm trying to see if there's any around at the moment. No, not currently. And part of, yeah, so that is part of it basically. Like never really experienced any pests with it. So am I saying this is a pest-free plant? This one specifically in my care for so long, yes. Do I think that all Polyscias Mings are kind of pest resistant? There's no plant that's really pest resistant. I wouldn't go that far. But again, I know I keep saying this in this video, but I'm really curious because there's not a lot of information about these plants online from what I can find. So if I can make this kind of a repository video from both my experiences and hopefully some of yours in the comments down below, I think this would make it super useful for somebody that's kind of going, I've bought this plant, I don't know what to do with it now. And that was the case with an older plant like years back when I had the the spiral variegated ginger basically, because there wasn't anything on there. And ironic enough, it's still, those videos are still some of my most popular videos because there's more information on those plants these days, but there wasn't when it first came out. So Yes, anything you want to share down below, please do let us know. But yeah, in my humblest of experiences, no pests at all. Now let's come into accessories and care for this one. So, few things I want to say on this. So you might have noticed the clear pot. So, is it necessary for this plant? Yes and no. Let me caveat that. You can also maybe notice that unlike a lot of my other clear pots, this does not have any extra holes. Now, there is things that I need to share from my experience with this plant. So, I wanted the clear pots because I wanted to see the roots. And let me show you some of the roots, and hopefully that will focus down below there. You might think that they're circling around there, but there's not that many roots at the top there. So that is part of it. I want to be able to notice it more so for the winter months. And in the summer as well, because I need to see when this is going dry, because this is a plant that I found really does not tolerate going bone dry. This is a terrestrial plant. I need to keep reminding people of terrestrial plants exist. Not everything is an aroid, not everything is an epiphyte that needs to go kind of more or less almost fully bone dry before you water it, otherwise you get root rot. These are plants that are used to having an awful lot of moisture around their kind of roots at the bottom. So part of the reason why I want to see this is because I want to be able to visually see and just go, okay, as long as it's not boggy at the bottom, if this much of the pot is wet, so about 50%, but this is now dry, that is when I'm going to be watering this plant, especially in the winter. I might even let it go slightly drier at the bottom there, purely because this, as I said, doesn't get the heat that it really needs in the winter for me and doesn't get the light level because I don't have a grow light on it. Do I think that potentially in the next house that I move to, if I've got the space, this might be a plant that I put into a really nice planter, I put it on a pedestal and have like a direct kind of grow light spotlight on the top of it and make it a bit of a feature of the house? 100%. I think this plant is beautiful, but that might just be me. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it's not for everybody. But this is very much something that I would consider a bit more of a show-stopping piece. And if I can control it by having it somewhere kind of more central in my house, where the temperature stays stable, and I've got something like a pretty grow light on top of it, this can easily become a really interesting kind of green element of the house decor as well. Because as I said, this is in the bathroom, but I don't think it needs that level of humidity. My bathroom also isn't that humid, to be fair. So there is that to be said. And other than that, and other than the fact that, and again, I'm kind of, you hear me mincing my words slightly here, because I don't want to say that my experiences of the winter with this, when it loses that many leaves and they all yellow off and fall off and you think the plant is dying, but it's not, is going to be universal. But as I said, those are the kind of caveats in my care, that it might get a bit too cold and it doesn't get a lot of light. So there's that. But other than that, I have it in a slightly denser soil mix. This is not in an aroid soil mix. This is a more traditional kind of houseplant mix. So think 50% cocoa coir and maybe 40% perlite and maybe 10% bark, just to make it a bit chunkier. But that is what this needs. Otherwise, in the summer, I'd be watering it all the damn time. On the point of watering, in my care, in the conditions that I was just saying now, yes, it does get warmer and sunnier in its location in the summer. This is watered every 3 to 4 days. That's how thirsty it is. It puts out a lot of growth. In the winter, this goes down to every 20 to 25 days. Yes, yes, yes. So there is that, but that's the kind of tips that I can give you in terms of its care. Right, I'm going to put it down for this last section, which is my final thoughts, just purely because my arms are just a bit too much pain at the moment with my arms. I always do this. I always do these videos like the day of or the day after I've watered. I just watered this yesterday. But yeah, so final thoughts on this one. Let me start this how I've usually start this, and apologies if I'm kind of delaying a bit on this, is trying to refresh my memory as I'm going through the video, because I haven't done one of these in a while, and I have heard all of you. I will try to do a few more. I will definitely be doing a few more of these. You'll definitely get one this week. So I'm filming this on Easter Sunday, and this will probably come out on the Thursday, and you'll probably have another one, a similar type of video in terms of a review the following week for sure, purely because filming and editing these types of videos is a lot more straightforward for me, and a little thing to be aware of for the next 2 weeks, and apologies if I take a bit longer to come back to your comments. I'll get to the final thoughts, bear with me. But apologies if I take a bit longer. I am doing jury service for the next 2 weeks, so on top of trying to work in the evenings. So my days are going to be full for the next 2 weeks. But anyway, back to the plant. So let's start how I usually start this, by saying, if I didn't own this specific plant and I had a chance to purchase it, but I knew everything that I knew now about this plant, would I purchase this? Yes, probably. And there's a probably, it's rather than a definite, because, as I said, there's a bit of maintenance with this plant. The probably is only there because I haven't grown this in the ideal conditions where maybe it might be slightly less challenging. I will say one thing that I do remember is I had a commenter that made a comment about this plant on a separate video, and I think they were saying they worked in a garden center or a plant store, and they were saying that this was one of the most challenging plants that they had to keep happy all the time. So I would imagine similar kind of ish. But as I said, as long as you can keep those conditions, it literally is, you can tell with this plant immediately, the moment that we move into autumn and winter and the light decreases, not just the light intensity, but the light hours, and the heat starts going down, is the moment that this one starts struggling. So if you can maintain those two at a stable condition, so a grow light that's always giving it the right light for the right amount of hours, and also in a place that's relatively stable, I would imagine there wouldn't be too much of an issue with this plant. Now, in terms of a score, with 0 or 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, where would I benchmark this specific plant? Oh, I'm going to give 2 scores. I'm sorry that I'm going to give 2 scores on this. So for the general public, who maybe isn't as obsessed with the looks of this plant, I would probably score this a 6 or a 7. Just purely because you do have those things that you need to remember. It gets a bit thirsty in the summer if you're kind of putting it in a window somewhere, if you're controlling everything, but because you need to control it, I'm cutting off some points there. But yeah, it is a good plant. It is one that you should hopefully be able to get relatively easily. I don't think it's massively expensive either if you can find it. But there are those things to consider. Now, for a personal score for me, and this might surprise you, this is a good 9 or a 10. That should tell you something. I think I'm leaning towards the 10 actually, because it's giving me those bonsai vibes. And however much I loved growing bonsais, I know that they can be a pain to kind of keep happy all the time until you get into that mindset as well. But also, let me know if you would be interested in me getting back into bonsais. It's something that I've been thinking about for a while. It might happen when I move to the next house, but I do want to try growing unusual and maybe starting a bonsai journey with some plants, but a bit more unusual plants rather than your usual bonsais. Let me know and let me see what I can do. It might be a failed experiment, but we could all have fun with Memo like struggling together, shall we? But yes, overall, this is still 2 years down the road, one of my favorite plants. And it is, I'm not going to lie, it is predominantly because of the looks. Because, as I said, it's maybe not the most straightforward plant to care for, but the looks make up to it for me. And it's just, oh, beautiful plant. But yes, I will stop prattling on. Hopefully you all left comments down below of your experiences, or even if you don't have this plant, do let us know. Is this something that's interesting? Is this something that you've seen and maybe thought of, something that you've tried in the past and would do again or wouldn't try again? Let us all know down below. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.